And we'll move on now to our next briefing from the Urban Land Institute, Mr. Marty Borko.
Great. Thank you all, and thank you for having us here today to share with you the recommendations that were the culmination of our 2.5-day technical assistance panel workshop that we held back in June. I think I had the chance to present to many of you kind of the process, and now we've completed the work, and what we're here today to share with you is our preliminary recommendations. And there is a more detailed report that will be the outcome to follow. Here with me today are three of the members of the TAP panel that are going to help with the presentation. Ron Altoon, an architect and urbanist, Robert Gardner from Robert Charles Lesser on market and economics, and Alan Freeman from Ernst & Young on some of the implementation and finance issues. So let us walk through our presentation, and we're excited to share with you our preliminary recommendations. Next slide, please. So just as a background, to share with you a little bit about the Urban Land Institute, we're a nonprofit global organization focused on the real estate industry. And our mission is really to help shape the future of the built environment through transformative impacts in communities worldwide. And so as part of the Los Angeles District Council, we really carry forth that mission as being the preeminent real estate regional organization, providing that kind of inclusive and trusted leadership in influencing both policy and practice. So we felt that fits very good into the work that you all are doing and the opportunity that we had to work on the Veterans Campus. Next, please. And just a quick reminder of the process. We engaged with Concourse Federal early on in the sponsorship engagement. They helped us work through kind of the scope of work, the logistics of setting up our technical assistance panel, the briefing book, which was wonderful background materials that were prepared for our team. We held that 2.5-day workshop in June. With the preliminary recommendations that we're going to share today, and we have just completed and are reviewing with Concourse Federal and the team the final report recommendations, which are to come. Next, please. And the Technical Assistance Panel for ULI is really meant to be a third-party objective view of looking at tough problems in communities and for organizations around. And we bring in our members who spend their time pro bono to work on these assistance panels. And for this one, we were really thrilled to have an incredible panel of ULI members that volunteered their time to do that in the range of architecture and finance and development, market analysis, sustainability, policy, traffic and circulation, and adaptive reuse. So it was a big panel because it was a complicated set of issues. I will say that on our panel, 3 of our panel members, ULI members and professionals, are veterans, and having their veterans perspective as part of the panel was important for us. Next slide, please. And through the process, we had a whole range of stakeholder interviews. Remember, this was a shortened version. It wasn't a huge outreach process, but we worked with Concourse Federal to invite and have a round of stakeholder interviews with key stakeholders that were veterans, administrators, people from the hospital, people that were unhoused veterans on campus. And so the stakeholder interviews was a very important part of the process for our members to get engaged as we did our workshop. Next, please.
It's all the same.
Our members also had an opportunity to have a really 2+ hour tour of the North Campus and really got to walk the site and see the buildings and the facilities, see the great work that the principal developer had done, and see a lot of the places where there was opportunities for us to begin to look at. And remember, the scope for our TAP was really not looking at housing issues as much as it was looking at how do you create a heart for this place, or a town center, or what we're calling the commons. So we got a chance to look at all the work that is being done on the campus to help us as we began to think about that idea of a town center in the commons. Next. And so moving forward, go ahead, please, next. As just an introduction in the context, and I think it's really important to understand that this report really wasn't intended to validate or invalidate any of the concepts of the previous master plans or the great work that's being done on the campus now by principal developer. We really began to look and address that within the context of unhoused and homeless veterans in the greater Los Angeles area, and what does it make to make community for them? And so it's not intended to impede the progress of any of the work that's being done on the campus, but to really help put it in the context and talk about what might be missing to help create that stronger sense of community on the campus. And we concentrated on those areas that we believe had the greatest impact that were available for us. Next. And then, as I said, we really came at this as an independent analysis with an objective third-party view of trying to create the most effective, efficient, and viable use of the space for this idea of the town center. And the idea of placemaking and integrating the veterans into the community were really the consistent themes that came up. We understand, and we'll talk about the fact that there's a lot of a strong regulatory framework that's in place governing a lot of the land use and approvals. And we looked at that and we started to make some recommendations on how to move through. Next. Now what I'd like to do is introduce Ron Altoon, who's an architect and urbanist that was helping on the panel to walk through a little bit of the ideas that we presented in terms of the town center and the commons. Ron?
Thank you, Marty. The whole idea of a commons was to, as Marty said, to build community. Community has a lot to do with not only the people that are living there, but the people that they could come and engage with. And our greatest mentors are those who have been there before, those who have lived their life and have grown their life and more abundantly and are there to help as mentors. So the Commons really created this new vision for a town center connecting with a larger community of veterans, but also to use services on the campus and best practices to put this all together. In a sense, rewriting the story for the West Los Angeles Veterans Campus and to kind of pay it forward. Next, please. So there were some key drivers here for us. And the key drivers for us were really to listen carefully, actually, to create spaces that spur purpose and meaning, that don't impede the implementation of critical housing, to provide appropriate and realistic program, to enhance the campus entry, wayfinding and links to both the North and South campuses. Interesting, this particular site really has one entrance. It's a massively large site, and all of this has to be accomplished with a single entrance. So we needed to resolve some roadway grids issues and prioritize open space. Next, please. Next, please. All right, so we looked at the two master plans that have been done, both 16 and 22, and we don't want to dwell on that too much, but part of the weaknesses that they had in common were the distance and visibility for non-resident veterans that may wish to participate on the campus, may wish to serve as mentors or engagers of those who are on the campus. So the distance was an issue, a lack of wayfinding was an issue, not having a heart, a kind of a place, a focal point was an issue. And some of the spaces were overscaled for the number of people that will be using them. They were demolishing some historic buildings. They were using mixed use, which is not allowed under the ground lease. And so let's go to the next one, please. It's pretty much the same on both of these, both 16 and 22. They tended to have the same issues. There was some strengths to them that they were trying to provide this space close to where people live, but that also has its drawbacks. So let's go to the next one and look at the program of uses. So next, please. Yes. All right. So here's our vision statement. This is so important to us to create an inviting human-scale mixed-use town center that prioritizes visual beauty, connects to and builds to community, respects regional history, reflects local core values, embraces sustainable principles, evokes a sense of place, is informed by contextual forces, and produces a legacy of enduring pride for the residents of the West Los Angeles Veterans Affairs Campus and all veterans in the Southern California region. Next, please. Okay.
No caller. I think that's where I come in at the moment.
Yes.
Good morning. When we think about the Commons, we think about who is here, who could be here, and so we look at various segments. We have the veterans that are on site. We have the hospital staff and service providers that are also here. We also have veterans in the region, and we have a very large, robust community around us as potential parties interested in the Commons. Next. Each of these segments have different interests. Those that live here will certainly have interests relating to market uses, food and beverage, and an array of veteran services, everything from workforce development to financial literacy, reintegration. Those in the region also should feel welcome to come here to take part in many of the same services that will be available to those that live here. And that's consistent with all the planning language that we've read. Those that work here also could be users of the various retail and services at the Commons. The Commons is meant to be an active place, and certainly the people that work here should be wanting to be there as well. And then there's the surrounding community. We show them because given the programming and the overall attractiveness of the Commons, they may find their way to spend some time in a place they may not have spent much time before. Next slide. To quantify those various market segments in terms of those that live here today, that's 944 units, plus there are 396 units at the Calvet State Home. That grows, as we understand it, to a total of 2,352. So that's the number that would be living here. Those that work here, we understand that's about 5,000 between the North and the South Campus. Those that could come here, there are about 280,000 veterans across LA County, and there's a vast population certainly within a very short distance. We estimated that the square footage of retail opportunity could be as large as 35,000 square feet by 2033. Next slide, please. Today, though, given the small numbers that we have in terms of those that live there, most of the demand, interestingly, comes from those in the region. And it was interesting to look at the veterans in the region and just ask the question: if they spent 1% of their restaurant spending at the Commons, what would that mean? Well, it means that it would be enough to support a 7,000 square foot restaurant. We're not saying that that's going to happen immediately, but it is interesting that such an opportunity could exist if the right type of place is created and the right type of tenant. Long term, the numbers grow as we had shown previously to over 35,000 square feet. Next slide, please. This is a graphic that shows the growth in the potential demand. In the short term, most of that comes from people that work here and potentially drawing veterans restaurant potential in the region. The on-site folks living here will generate a growing demand over time as their numbers grow. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The various uses that make sense to be at this common include everything from small market, coffee house, recreation, and there's much discussion here about the arts and vocational training. All of that makes sense as well. There's also the potential, if the right environment is there, to create a farmer's market, a crafts market, more of a place. Next slide, please. We learned that there are veteran-run businesses that exist, and it would be ideal to encourage these businesses to locate in the commons. For example, we know that there's a restaurant in Downey here in Los Angeles County called Bastard's Canteen, which is a veterans-owned and operated restaurant that's very successful. We're not saying that that particular restaurateur wants to be here, but it would be exciting to have that veterans-owned business here, as well as owning and operating other businesses at the commons. And that provides a marketing and an execution opportunity. Next slide, please. We also learned that a hospitality component, although it seems a little bit certainly more long-term, but what an interesting opportunity it would be to attract the hospitality component. We know about the Marines Memorial Hotel in San Francisco. Obviously, that's a market rate hotel, but it does offer discounts to veterans and their families. It's something to think about, not only because it provides a source of regional use, but on site it provides job opportunities and training opportunities, as you can imagine that is associated with the hospitality function. Next slide. I'll turn it over to Ron.
Thank you, Bob. So I want to pick up on just rewinding for a second to the program of common uses. When we were on the campus, we saw a sense of aloneness, a sense of isolation. And if you're wanting to integrate veterans back into society, if you're wanting them to transition out of homelessness, once you provided a place for them to be able to begin to do that, you need the kind of programmatic elements there to cause that to happen. And whether they're retail, dinings, veteran services, convenience, recreation and fitness, clinical services, arts, education, vocational training, co-work space, civil engagement and convenience, farmers market and craft programming and hospitality, those need to be accommodated. And how do you do that? You do that by placemaking with certain principles. First, you want to engage and build community. Building community is critical. You want to analyze the context so you're doing it appropriately. You want to celebrate what you have on the site. We have remarkable natural and historic features. You want to set up a framework that causes this to really work and work effectively. You begin with landscape spaces and furnish them so that people wish to use them. To the greatest extent, you want to use the same piece of land multiple times, so you want to make it mixed use. Some uses stacked on others. You want to contain spaces so you build the intensity of participation, create a kind of a sense of harmony, but also allow dissonant voices to speak. You want to emphasize landmarks, nodes, districts, paths, and edges for defining space and creating connectivity. You want to talk about psychographics, which is really the human condition over demographics, which are the hard data. It's the subjective things that causes people to feel their life fulfilled over the numbers. You want to make it sustainable and resilient and integrate into it the kind of amenities that bring it to life. Next, please. Thank you. And along the way, we can make this a sustainable and resilient place. If the care is given from the very beginning, there's no additional cost to be able to do that, and you begin to deal with what you've got there, like shade, and deal with some food production on site as well, electrification, so forth. And next, please. So when we began to look, and one more, yeah, when we began to look at the commons, we decided there are really three areas we can talk about. Wilshire Boulevard actually separates the bottom third of the property from the upper two-thirds. But the upper third is really land that's either a golf course or leased to a school. So really, Wilshire Boulevard is almost in the middle of the property. On this drawing, you see the kind of pink line going horizontally, and that spot tends to run right through the Wadsworth Hotel, which is kind of ground zero. It's the center of the entire property, both horizontally and vertically. So it gives us a chance to tie three locations together, one that we're calling the Quad, one we're calling the Parade Ground, and one we're calling Chapel Square. Next, please. Thank you. So the real issue is site access and distribution. And these are just diagrams that tend to show how you access the site, shown in kind of lavender, and egress the site shown in blue. And then once you get on the site, how you distribute through it, visual corridors into the site to give you a sense of target. The chapel and the Wadsworth Theater can be seen from Wilshire Boulevard and from San Vicente. So it gives you an opportunity to take advantage of that. Next, please. So the Quad, this is an area up high where the first two master plans were drawn. The building, sort of the upper right in blue, that looks like a letter E on its side. That's building 13. It's an historic building. And we're saying it may be possible to convert that into hotel use. Actually, our studies showed that hotel would fit very nicely into that if it's possible to do that with adaptive reuse, but also to hold that space contained rather nicely and tightly, so it doesn't drift away. It's kind of held by the buildings around it. The area shown in red there is allowing uses that would generate activity along that space, defined on all sides. Next, please. The parade ground is an area that connects the historic building 13 in red at the upper center and the Wadsworth building at the lower center on axis, according to the original campus. The blue buildings there and the one in lavender are the original residential buildings. And we're basically saying with this scheme, let's work with what's there. Let's take this and use the building at the top, which may then become the Veterans Hotel, and the Wadsworth building almost as anchors to hold this space. Then to fill in along that parade with building units that can support the other services we talked about: veteran services, cafes, making spaces, art spaces, clinics, things like that. So right in the heart of the original campus, fed by parking on either side and below without disturbing the tranquility of the campus to the north. So that's the parade ground scheme. It maintains the legacy trees. It's easy access off of Wilshire Boulevard, as I said, without disturbing the campus. Next, please. Thank you. The third location is Chapel Square. You see the little building in gray on the right side. That's the historic chapel, which is you see in the photograph there. That's an icon that is viewed on Wilshire Boulevard. And this was a thought of wrapping some buildings around a square that faces that, so one can have immediate access to those goods and services while taking advantage of the iconic chapel to kind of bring identity to the project. Next, please. We talked about a Veterans Hotel. This is a hotel that veterans could use when they visit friends and colleagues on the campus. Veterans can use if they visit Southern California region. But it's intended for veterans and their families, but to begin to reconnect those who live here as residents with those who would come on visit, or those that would come to be mentors. So you can see the hotel is laid out rather neatly within the configuration of that building. Activate the Quad, connect the Quad to the parade ground, It creates a really unique program for the Commons. Next, please. Lastly, this is a drawing concept diagram that really talks about the three spaces. The quad at the upper left, the Commons, the parade ground that connects Building 13 with the Wadsworth Theater, and the Chapel Square to the right, creating a range of opportunities here on this campus that are minimally, if disruptive at all, to the activities that take place. So now I hand it back to someone else.
Next slide, please. And Alan will walk us through some of the implementation strategies.
Great. A feasible implementation strategy will be critical to creating a mixed-use, human-scale town center at the West LA Veteran Campus. The question now is, how do we make the Commons a reality in a way that leverages all the work today by the VA, the principal developer, and the veterans community? To develop these implementation considerations, we had numerous helpful conversations, as Marty described, conversations with the VA, including legal, real estate, finance. We also heard from veterans advocacy groups and the principal developer, and we reviewed some key documents such as the Enhanced Use Lease Agreement and the 2016 to 2022 Master Plan documents. From a management and governance perspective, it makes a lot of sense that the VA brought on a master developer, the principal developer, to work with the VA on the redevelopment of the campus. A master developer can bring together different stakeholders, create a viable development plan from a design and financial feasibility perspective, secure financing, oversee construction and operations. We think securing a strong master developer for Commons will be important. Certain land parcels critical to the success of Commons are not currently part of the Enhanced Use Lease Agreement with the existing principal developer. In order to ensure Commons is appropriately prioritized as part of the overall campus development plan, the VA should consider adding Commons into the existing principal developer EUL, or perhaps separating the Commons land into a new master development area. The land takedown schedule should also be evaluated based on the chosen strategy. And we've seen that in other successful public-private partnerships, it can be extremely helpful for the public agency to designate a champion for the project to represent the agency and enhance collaboration with the master developer. Due to the complexity of operating and maintaining a mixed-use town center, strong governance through HOA and CC&Rs and an oversight board will be critical. Next slide. During the course of our project, we heard over and over that veterans really want to play an integral part in the redevelopment of the West LA campus. And we have seen the significant public input into the various master plan efforts over the years, and most recently, the outreach conducted by the principal developer. VA should continue to build on these efforts to ensure a very high level of veteran engagement during the course of the project. Engagement could take the form of tapping into the broader Southern California veteran community, as well as those veterans who have more regular contact and involvement with the West LA campus. The Veterans Collective should continue to serve a role in the process. Regular communication can help build trust with the veteran community and help ensure that design and programming elements of Commons are aligned with the interests and goals of veteran stakeholders. Engagement shouldn't be viewed as a one and done, but rather a continuous long-term process for which the VA may need to stand up additional staffing and processes to coordinate. Next slide. And while the West LA Leasing Act correctly put the focus on the urgency of building housing at the West LA campus, from our discussions with different stakeholders, there appears to be some ambiguity whether non-housing uses not specifically enumerated in the Act are permissible, such as mixed use and retail and hotel, the different uses that Bob and Ron mentioned. Although mixed-use public-private development has been developed on other federal agency lands, such as DOD, mixed use may be an emerging concept for the VA. To ensure VA regulations are not an impediment to building a town center at West LA, The VA may want to obtain a legal determination, if that's possible, or pursue new federal legislation to clarify that mixed use and non-housing uses, such as retail and even hotel, are permissible at the West LA campus. Next slide. Due to the complexity of mixed-use development on federally owned land, conventional financing is likely going to be limited. Because it is likely there'll be a funding gap for certain elements of the commons, it's important to explore a diversified financing strategy. We recognize that there's still a lot of work to go to complete before finalizing a financing plan, but the VA should consider a variety of options here, including private sector grants, government incentives, grants, tax credits, possibly naming rights or sponsorship opportunities. We understand that certain existing EUL ground lease revenues stay locally at the West LA campus as opposed to being absorbed into higher level VA budgeting. We think it's important to ensure that this practice continues, if possible, in order to support West LA campus specific redevelopment and services. From an operational perspective, several ideas emerged around the importance of securing a qualified retail operator, understanding the role of VA Canteen and the ability of VA Canteen to partner with other retailers, such as veteran-owned or aligned retailers, or maybe even integrating volunteers. Driving foot traffic to the commons will be critical to supporting businesses at the commons. Perhaps there's an opportunity to shift certain non-medical personnel and uses to the North Campus. And public safety is also a topic that's come up in our stakeholders' discussions. So Marty, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. You can go to the next. So just some final thoughts and kind of talking about next steps. I think it's important to realize that this work in the technical assistance panel was never anticipated to be a new master plan. We really think that it best used as a foundational document as we start to move into the 2025 master plan update, and began to integrate some of the ideas that we came up with for a heart to the campus and the idea of the commons, to do that, while it again make sure it doesn't impede the great progress that's being made in increasing the permanent supportive housing on the site. But there's some issues that need to be understood and maybe become part of those questions or scope documents in 2025 master plan, which is, we talked about mobility and parking, access and circulation. There's an opportunity, there's some wonderful landscape and trees on it. There really hasn't been a tree survey to really understand the importance of the existing landscape on the campus, which is really a unique feature of the campus, and to take advantage of that. Talking about energy needs and sustainability and comfort. We did talk about the issue of wayfinding and identity, and maybe creating some design guidelines. And at the end of the day, as all of our team said, listening to the veterans that are living on campus, that utilize the VA campus and have opportunities to access the campus are really critical. So it's not a new master plan, but we believe it's an important foundational document that will assist as the scope as the master plan moves on. Next, please. So for us, the exercise was really an understanding of veterans' needs and the value for creating community for the veterans, and about that idea of community and fellowship and connecting things and being synergistic, and about family. And our team was very excited to be able to participate, and we hope that the recommendations that come out of both this presentation and the final report that gets done are of value to you as we move forward in the development of the VA campus. And we just want to thank you again for giving us the opportunity at Urban Land Institute to play a role in thinking about the evolution of the campus. Thank you. I know lots of information, and again, share the deck, and I think the report that's coming out will provide a lot more detail and information than we were able to do in a short bit of time today.
Thanks very much. We do have a couple of questions. Mr. Begley.
Thank you, General. It's Rob Beglin, Chair of the Master Plan Subcommittee, and I'm calling that out because we're deeply happy to hear from you, gentlemen. About a year ago, we recommended to the Secretary and the agency that ULI do this study because we know about your expertise in this area. So really gratifying to see the results. You're absolutely right that the master plan in 2016 and in 2022 were comprehensive documents and that you're not trying to remake them. But I think the one thing you guys did, or that your full team did, you had a bunch of folks, was this was the first time anyone estimated commercial need and commercial viability for commercial activity on the campus. And so what I wanted to ask you about was, how do you go about that? In other words, you gave us in the presentation estimates of user populations, and you gave us examples of commercial activity that you'd expect to see. But could you just explain to us a little more analytically how you think about that as either land users or developers?
Yeah, I think, Bob, you want to take a first stab at that, because the focus of your expertise really is about helping understand market and users, and then Alan and Ron can jump in as well if there's an additional.
Sure. Behind the numbers, Rob, were consumer expenditure patterns, and behind those is the attempt to understand what can be, what makes sense to be spent here. Now, bear in mind, we also had a developer on the panel. So when we were looking at these development magnitudes, the sales per square foot assumptions were based on market numbers. So to be very specific, we start with the demand magnitudes. We translate them into sales per square foot, and obviously, given the nature of the location, we look at what we can attract and the capture levels that make sense on site. So then, to me, we need to see a developer like the developer that we had on the panel to help us think through what can we put here as soon as possible, given very limited demand, but demands that grow over time. And so that knowledge will be very helpful. His connectivity with the brokerage community will be very helpful. Also consider the placemaking that Ron spoke about, which is creating a setting that becomes synergistic to the whole opportunity. And it's not easy to give you one linear answer. It's really multidimensional, and I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, Rob, is as you move forward in thinking about the scope for 2025 master plan update, that I think part of that really ought to be detailed market analysis and economic kind of feasibility, either with that notion of outside expertise, and for us, having a developer who develops these kind of things on our team was as Bob said, very useful. I don't know, Alan, if you have some other thoughts.
No, I think, Mark, you covered. I was going to try to say.
Great.
Mr. Alman.
Thanks, ULI, for the briefing. My question is more directed at VA in terms of a timeline of when we would expect to see the final report, and how does VA intend to distribute the information to the community?
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Rob Merchant for the record. see everyone looking at me.
I-
So,
You're just the closest.
no, and I'm the appropriate person to answer the question. So our planning team, led by Chelsea Black, who's sitting over to my right, and Andrew Strain, have been working very hard with ULI on the refinement of the presentation. And when we get to the final recommendations, we'll take those internally and do a review of those first, and then it is time for some extensive outreach to get feedback from the veteran community and validate what we are hearing from ULI. And I do want to give credit to Marty and his team on ULI as we've been going through this process over the last 3 months and having some iterative feedback from their initial recommendations to where we are today. They've been very responsive to listening to that while still deferring to their expertise in these grounds, because I may be a lot of things. I'm pretty much a generalist. This is not my area of expertise, and we need to rely on them to do what we have asked them to do. And so that next task really is that area of feedback. It's got to be feedback that goes beyond room 1281 and building 500 on the West Los Angeles campus. It's got to be extensive throughout the community. It's got to take advantage of existing structures that we have in LA County, like the Veterans Commission, as a very valuable tool for doing that, and then really getting out there to places that maybe we don't normally get to really determine what it is that veterans need and want. And as we've been looking at this, we've been kind of looking at 3 different audiences, and Marty and his team highlighted these, maybe described them in different ways, but they are the veterans who live on our campus. And I think then secondarily are those who frequent the campus but don't live on the campus. And then thirdly, the wider veterans community. And we need to hit each of those. And I do like, Rob, as you pointed out, the analysis on the shifting use patterns as we grow the number of veterans living on the campus and how that also changes the scope of services. You need to remember that what we are developing here in this concept called the Commons, which I think is a very good refinement of the concept, to be thinking not just 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, but 10 years from now, and what in maturity the land at West Los Angeles will look like, and the home that it will become again, and that vision of always being a robust, healing, restorative community that links housing, healthcare, and the services needed for the veterans there to thrive.
Yeah, just because this is my last meeting, I just want to, throw this out there and VA can take it or not. But I think this should be the subject of intensive public debate, starting with the ULI report becoming public. I think that this is something that VA could potentially make a final determination on for Master Plan 2025. So taking the full year of 2024 to receive input on this design concept, because it's a concept, and, not to rush it. That said, we have a problem with respect to the way that the current parcel relief schedule is designed, in which VA intends to essentially start Master Plan 2022 Town Center in May. And I think it's entirely too premature to be doing that, because we don't know what we're doing. And this has been a concern for a long time, and obviously the future board members will continue to receive updates. Again, my last meeting, I think the focus right now should be on permanent supportive housing for not only chronically homeless veterans, but at-risk veterans. And let's get more input on what this town center is. And I think VA did a great job with getting that initial blush, and let's see what the community thinks about it and make a decision for Master Plan 2025. That's it.
Mr. Zinner.
Yeah, Jim Zenner for the record. Yeah, I just want to strongly agree with Mr. Allman's comments about the parcel release. Looking at the map recently, it doesn't make sense. It seems like we're going further south when we could be looking at keeping all the housing on the northern portion of the campus. And so really looking forward to OAEM's brief tomorrow and talking through this. You know, the land use is very contentious, as we all know, and commercialization is something that I've heard a lot of feedback from constituents about. And I just want to start with my own opinion of this for full transparency. I like the idea of very carefully tailored commercialization, the allotment of commercialization on the property, specific to veteran-owned businesses, a hotel that recently transitioning service members have an opportunity to come stay. If veterans are visiting from another part of the country, a place for them to stay, I think that's a really good piece. But understand that, you know, due to the past land use issues, we have to be very, 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 very careful about this. You know, to add on to the Veteran Advisory Commission, Mr. Strain's been going around to each supervisor district town hall with us. We very much appreciate that participation. We definitely would welcome this type of, lending that type of engagement to making sure that we're getting every voice as much as we can from the veteran community about this project. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bork, thanks. Philip, did you have, I'm sorry. Mr. Mangano.
Philip Mangano, I just wanted to commend ULI for this, what I would call a fearless report, not concerned about what one voice or another voice might say, but really giving an authentic and objective view of what the campus can be. So for that fearlessness, I commend you, and for the larger sense of creating a sense of belonging on the campus so that the veterans who live there will have a larger community to relate to and have the sense of a community and to live in a community and again to have that sense of belonging in terms of commercial and marketing and all of that. I think all of that is a helpful thought. It's the first time I've really felt that the campus was breathing, that there was the possibility of breathing a heartbeat on the campus. And I just think you've done a wonderful job. My only question is where the ice cream parlor will be.
We'll find a place.
Absolutely.
Excellent job, ULI. In my view, the fearlessness is coming to this committee with 46 slides in your briefing. But we made it through, and it was really a good job of moving through that and hitting some very important areas. So we applaud you for that.
Thank you all for letting us participate with you today and sharing our views and recommendations, and we look forward to continuing to support the work that you guys are doing.
Excellent. We'll see that. Thank you.